Mike and I have spent a lot of time in forests the last few weeks. We're in week 3 and have seen much about the life cycle of a forest from when it's coming back from a fire right through its time as an old growth forest. And he said something about the growth of a forest that I had never heard before and wanted to share.
Okay, what fascinates me about life in general out here, everything is green. And what we know is all these green things grow through a process of photosynthesis. So they virtually get their food from the air, is what happens. Science understands this is the process. We're clueless on how we haven't replicated this yet. But in the process, we know that green things live off of carbon dioxide. When they take that in through photosynthesis, one thing that happens is the oxygen molecule gets kicked aside as sort of like a waste product. We appreciate that. It provides for us. But what that means in the story of what is around us is all of these things, and we're attached to the earth, so we say, oh, the earth is so honors us, feeds us, nourishes us because everything comes out of it. That's true. All these things are planted there. But where they're taking their food is from the sky and from the sun. That makes these monsters all carbon units, and their growth is dependent on the sun and the sky to feed them. So in a very real sense, the sky is the mother, is the nourisher of all these green things that we have been wandering through. Water is important. It's an element we all need, plants and animals. One of the nice things about traveling as we have been is that every day the only thing that really is a concern to us is water. That's what we talk about. That's what we plan our daily schedule around. That's what we travel the length of our trips. It's about water. It is very freedom-giving to be in an environment where that's the only thing on your mind. That is all we deal with. And the rest is all a benefit.
Wow. We've also seen in spending so much time in a forest and usually camping in the forest, so you're literally sleeping under these trees, you're resting at the bottom of trees all the time, is you hear sounds that you don't hear anywhere else. Sometimes it's bird song. We are usually woken by bird song rather than an alarm. And when the birds start singing again in the evening, we know we better be fixing dinner, and when they're quiet, we better go to bed. So you're very aware of the sound in a forest. We have to say, though, that one of the most striking sounds occurred in the first section as we were headed to Sula, and I didn't comment on it in that video because, quite frankly, I think we were still processing what had happened. And Mike has a story to add to that as well for what happened, and I'll chime in.
There were two instances that happened. One lasted longer than the other, but where thunderstorms blow up normally in the late afternoon, and they're very strong, very violent, and very short, typically. In one of the storms, I noticed the trees took on a kind of sound of their own during it, kind of a whistling, wailing sort of thing I'd never heard before. But then the wind was intense. But later in the trip, we stopped in a burnt-out area. Okay, so all these tree skeletons standing around us, and we could see, that we were going to get hit with another squall. And I was off at a little spring gathering water, so it was hailing, it was raining, didn't matter. I was gathering water, and then this wind picked up, stronger and stronger, until it just wailed through these trees. It was like 1,000 wind instruments playing all at once, and they would change pitch as the wind intensified. Never heard anything like it in my life.
Nor had I.
Yeah.
It was close to a scream or a wail. It was as if all the dead skeleton trees, which were just spears without branches in most cases, were wailing together in a chorus. I've never had an experience like that either.
So in effect, the sky played these like an instrument.
Yep.
Each one vibrating because of the intensity of the wind. And in a sense, it could be haunting. It
Mm-hmm.
might be frightening, but most of all, it was primal. Okay, it
Very
was
much.
it was something that nothing else makes that noise. And
Well, you had said to me afterwards, it was as if we were in a place of grief.
mhm.
Because it was as if the forest itself was grieving for what it had once been. I can't explain it in another way, but it was intense and profound.
Yeah, and by the same token, it was the forest grieving because you could see, the loss that had occurred,
Uh-huh.
the agony that it had gone through, but the forest could not generate that sound unto itself. So it's the sky. This is a mother who's lost, who has seen her children come through this suffering. So it grieves too. Can each one accomplish this separately? No, the sky can't make that noise by itself.
No, it's that symbiosis,
So it was
and
a
they're
symbiosis,
really
exactly,
together. The connection made that sound.
Yeah. This is the moment that they could express the anguish that they share.
Now,
Very powerful.
Give the connection to the history
Now,
of that place.
the other thing that occurred to me later, because I only learned later where we were, as we had entered into the Nez Perce territory, where they traditionally had occupied the land. Now, after their capture and splitting up the different members of the different tribes, many still maintained their ancient ways, their ancient spirituality, their language. And to what extent today, I'm not sure, but not so many years ago, things were quite intact. Among the Nez Perce, when someone dies and a funeral is held, the women are not permitted to cry, because if they do, the spirit will be reluctant to leave. So in the Nez Perce funeral, be in a large tent or a hall if that's available.
Would you have attended a Nez Perce
Yes,
funeral?
yes. They'll place the casket centrally, more towards one end. At the far end is the family, and the casket is basically in front of them. And there's a large space left around it. Against the wall on one side will be the drummers, and it's still referred to as the drummer religion. And then the rest of the hall is where other friends, family can attend during the ceremony. In the ceremony, in the beginning, people will be seated, and then when the drummers stand up, everybody stands up. And there'll be a line of drummers. Each drummer plays his own song. And as the drummer plays, everybody stands in the hall just waving their hand back and forth. Okay? If an individual or family wants to, they can come out and within that song dance around the casket. When the song ends, there'll be a brief pause because someone might want to make a speech about the person, and then the next drummer plays his song, and this goes on. Okay? All down the line of drummers, usually from 7 to 10. When the last drummer finishes, then everybody sits down. It's time for a break. Now, during the break, then it's the women's turn. They're not permitted to cry, but they are permitted to wail. And this is what they do. So this is the sound that fills the hall during a break, is just the women wailing. And no, I've not heard anything like that before. Okay?
Except perhaps in this forest.
Except perhaps in the forest. And it struck me that people were referred to as primitive. The Indonesians are nice. They call them primary, not primitive people. The original people. We all, go back far enough, learn from the animals and nature how to live, how to survive, even how to speak, okay, how to communicate. So it just struck me the parallel between what we heard in the woods, in the skeleton of a forest, and the wailing that the Nez Perce women are permitted to do, because this is an appropriate way to celebrate and to grieve the loss of this person who has gone from them. And it would not be reaching very far to say they learned this from the sky.
From the sky, from the trees themselves interacting with the sky. it was a very moving experience for both Mike and I. And I think we're open to those experiences out here, but they are available to anyone if you put yourself where they might happen. And they are a gift. That was not a happy experience. You know, you come out here and you think nature is going to be a place of joy and restoration, but sometimes it's a place of intense conversation. And I know we're both very grateful,
Yes.
very grateful for that experience. We'll be pondering it for a long time to come, and it once again reminds us is that we are truly all connected. The people of this land and the land itself and the sky and each other, we are all connected to nature and to each other, and the history of the land carries forward, continues to carry forward.
Yeah. It was a strong message of this is who you are.
Yes. So thanks for listening.